Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every week, every game from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. This is the finals week 1 punting preview. Off a winning round 25, we went 2-1 on best bets, and we got back in the winner's circle on the mixed matchup, which we're very used to doing most weeks. And I got another finals mixed matchup coming up later in this show. Of course, we lost to the early multi. The team list didn't play out exactly as we would have liked. I think we're still about plus 18 units on multis for the season. Still above 60% winners on best bets, 69% winners on mixed matchup, and a total profit all year close to $3,000. And hopefully we can carry that through the finals. This is the best time of year, really. The best footy and the best teams remain, and we're going to go in deep with all 4 games. I've also got bonus cameo picks, some of our sharpest contributors from the Tripod Facebook group and from the app. I've reached out and they're going to actually supply video picks that I had sent to me, but I haven't even listened yet myself. I didn't want to bias my own process, but we're going to play those live, and then I'll also give my instant reaction. Obligatory warning that I share every year, or in past years Alex has as well. The finals are even harder to beat than the regular season with the NRL. There's less games, there's more scrutiny, there's less kind of little intangibles. You don't get those motivation dips or teams ever looking ahead. Everyone's max motivated, everyone's hoping to play their best, and therefore the lines are more correct, and when the lines are more correct, they're tougher to beat. But I still have a couple of best bets. Just before I share them, I also want to give a massive shout out to a long-time follower of the pod, Tim Moody, who won the Supercoach competition. This is over 100,000 people. I mean, I don't play myself, but I know what's involved, and I know that to win that competition with over 100,000 people involved, and Tim is also part of the Supercoach Experience podcast, and for him to come out on top is a phenomenal achievement. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Tim. Congratulations. All right, let's jump into the best bets. And it's going to begin with the Friday night game that kicks off the final series. And I'm going to take the Storm in the first half, minus 3.5 points, $1.88 on Ladbrokes and Neds. I know a lot of people are going to give Manly a red hot crack in this one. I don't really disagree with you. This game has some awesome potential. Manly does have a real chance, but I still think when I look at the matchup, the Storm are the superior team across the park. It begins with the forwards. I know that Manly's got a strong forward pack that could hang with the Storm. We saw that a few weeks ago, but the Storm weren't even at full strength in that game, particularly they had forwards out, and the Storm still won that game by 10 in the end. And that's where I see the first edge. I can't ignore Tom Trbojevic playing out of this world, but if there is a defense that can contain him, I think it could be a Melbourne Storm scheme, led by Bellamy. And I think that a guy who's also in really good form just quietly is Pappenhausen, getting closer to his early season form. And where the other big edge that I see in this game is dummy half. I think what the Storm brings to the table with that 1-2 punch, Hectic Cheese and Harry Grant, is just a difference maker that the Manly side doesn't have. If the line was minus 7.5, I'd play that, but since the full game line is 8 or above everywhere, I take the minus 3.5 in the first half. I have a bonus pick on this game, but I'll share that in the in-depth preview. But my best bet, minus 3.5 first half. And my second of 2 best bets for the finals, I'm going either team 1-12 in the Knights Eels game. That's $1.83 on Sportsbet. Next best price, $1.82, Top Sport, Ladbrokes and Neds as well. So Parramatta's had the better season than Newcastle. They also showed that higher ability when they caused the upset of the year, beating Melbourne. If they repeat that kind of form, then this bet could be in trouble. I think they'll handle Newcastle in that scenario. And I do expect a good performance from Parramatta. I mean, they'll be fresh. They rested basically everybody in round 25. I still don't really see why they're such a big favourite in this game, which allows us to get at a market like either team 1-12 above $1.80. Because Newcastle's a solid side as well, and Newcastle also rested several players, particularly rested their forwards last week. Now they get everybody back. I think that there really isn't a lot of a gap between these teams, and they like to play a similar way, which is being very physical. And then I actually give the edge to the Knights spine. I think since Clifford has been incorporated, I think Ponga should be the best player on the park. And of course, with Reid Marnie not there for Parramatta, it just detracts from how threatening they can be. And I'm not saying Parramatta doesn't win. I'm not sure who wins this one, but I think Sunday afternoon could be the most entertaining game of the round and could go down to the wire. I only play either team 1-12 if I lean to the underdog, and this way, if the line is, I don't think it'll get to 10, we get essentially Knights plus 12.5. The only thing we risk is that the Knights could win 13 plus, and because I respect the form Parramatta, and as I say, I think both sides will be bang up for elimination footy, I think the best way to get at it is either team 1-12. Okay guys, just again to wrap it up from round 25, it was a great round for us, and we're getting back with a winning record on best bets, staying above 60% best bet winners, but also for those custom multis that people shared before the NRL season, including 34-1. Shout out Kieran Smith who gave that out. It was kind of along a lot of similar lines to the 15-1 that I gave out that also cashed a couple weeks earlier, and that one got up with the Sharks missing the finals. Crazy that it came down to the final day. Not that it ended up that close. I talked all about round 25 in my recap pod. Go back and check that out. But a great year for futures for us. And let's not forget, we've got a futures tip riding. Of course, I've still got my Storm Panthers grand final tip that really looks to be in a strong position as we go into the finals, and I know plenty of you guys are riding that. Speaking of futures multis, I've got to mention, I'll just be quick because not everyone cares about NFL, but the NFL season does start on Friday, and I have made a 10-1, similar fashion to what I've done with other sports. Obviously, you know the NRL 15-1, which, you know, if you got on it, you were happy, and if you didn't, you're probably annoyed that you missed out on that one. And then we had the Euro tip that got up, and the Olympic tip that got oh so close. And so I've done the same sort of thing with a futures multi that people can ride for the NFL, and opened up the opportunity for anyone else to have a crack. And I mean, I think we've got 30 plus suggestions that have been commented in the Tripod group that Tristan has been working hard behind the scenes to price all these up. And we've got season multis from, 5-1 to 80-1, a range of like 30 or more of them suggested by group members with the reasoning and only available to back on Top Sport. And I love the ability to jump on some long shots for a season. Then you don't even have to think too hard each week about which games you want to bet on. You've got your teams that you're riding that you want to win and your teams that you want to go against. So check that out, as well as an NFL season announcement and preview that I did with Nettie, with Matt O'Keefe, The Undertaker, and Barney yesterday. So that'll be in your feed. That's available on wherever you watch this or listen to this as well. So check out NFL if you're interested. If you do want to get on that 10-1, get on quick. Tristan actually told me it's approaching a level of liability that they're comfortable with. It has been hit pretty hard. And speaking of Tristan, let's throw to him now. He's going to recap how the bookies did in round 25 and then give insights into week 1 of the finals.
Hello Tripod family, it's Tristan Merlihan here from Top Sport. This has been a busy day. I've been pricing up NFL multis for the group for a good chunk of the morning, did a few last night, so thanks for sending them all in. It's always enjoyable doing those sort of things, and glad there's been plenty of people take it up. There's been some big numbers flying around on it too, actually, so we have had to move some of those prices, and yeah, well done for coming up with some obscure options. I've been racking my brain out to price them, and the way that some of those the betting trends have come on some of them, maybe I haven't got them quite right. So we'll see how we go. But well done for everyone sticking them through. We've still got a couple of days till the season starts, so fire any more through that you want. But back to rugby league. We're into the finals. Thank Christ the last round of the season's over. That was a nightmare. That was the most unenjoyable round to trade for me and our team for many a year. There was just so much uncertainty, so many games that didn't have a lot of meaning, and it made it very tricky. So we're into the finals now. We got a great batch of 4 games. We're just capping off last week. The worst result of the round for us was the Broncos against the Knights. That was unrelenting money for the Broncos. Even when Pearce and Ponga got named in, it pinged back out, and then the Broncos, there was weight of money their way. The other bad one was the Panthers Eels. That game moved, I think it moved 16 or 18 points, and the Panthers looked like they weren't going to cover for a long time. It was very tight in the first half, and then they just ran away with it. So a very ordinary result in that regard, but we moved forward. The good result of the weekend for us was the Roosters against the Raiders, where there was a lot of support for the Raiders. They had everything to play for, and the Roosters still down on troops, but they just showed what a gutsy outfit they are. Roll on to the finals, and we got 4 big games. Very excited for them. I'm a little bit surprised. All the money's been for the favourites. Literally every favourite's been backed in every one of these games so far. All through multis, and punters are expecting the big guns to fire through. I was a bit surprised, particularly with that Knights game. I gave them a real big chance, but we'll see how we go. In terms of how these games are gonna play out, it's interesting. We have lowered the total points a little bit. We've obviously got the class teams playing now. You'd probably expect, looking at Origin, maybe the refereeing is not as harsh as what it has been. A few less 6 agains. I think we've seen a little trend in that regard in the last few weeks. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get some tighter battles. Obviously, some of these better sides as well are going to be in the arm wrestle for a lot longer. We've seen a lot of games blow out late, where this may not be the case this week. There are a few decent lines, so perhaps in the last 20 minutes a team might get on top. Particularly next week and the week after, I think we'll see some pretty tight, close, finals-type football games. Looking forward to it. Everyone that's having a bet, make sure you do it responsibly, and we'll talk to you later in the week.
Thank you, Tristan. Let's jump into the game. So Storm play Manly. The Manly are an 8.5 point underdog. The game is on the Sunshine Coast. My best bet is to take the Storm minus 3.5 in the first half at $1.88 Ladbrokes and Neds. My bonus pick is this, especially if they've already just moved that first half line, which is possible. But as we get to this point in the pod, Storm halftime full-time, $1.87, also on Ladbrokes and Ned. So not a best bet, but very close. So again, there's along the similar lines that I think the Storm gets out in front. I like the first half play a little bit more because to win halftime full-time, Storm have to be in front anyway at halftime. The only difference is Storm could be up 1 or more likely 2 points, or unlikely case, but still possible 3 points at halftime, and that would keep you alive in halftime full-time, whereas your minus 3.5 would be sunk. But of course, halftime full-time, you're sweating for 80. You lose if the Storm comes back or even sends it to extra time. And even if another option, I would definitely lean Storm minus 8 at $2. The way I'm reading the market, I do think there is a chance the line could dip under 8, depending on the Munster news, which I'll get to. But I still think at $2 odds is a pretty strong play, Storm minus 8. For me to play the first half minus 3.5, I have to lean that way on the full strength line. Okay, the Storm are pretty close to full strength. They're going to get at least 6 key starters back this week, possibly up to 8, but that depends on the fitness of Cam Munster, who got a laceration on the knee that led to an infection 2 weeks ago, so he's still up in the air, his availability, and George Jennings dealing with, I think, a hamstring injury, although the Storm definitely will be out without their star winger, Addo Carr, who has got a hamstring injury. Pappenhausen's been named at fullback, Hectic Cheese at 9, Grant on the bench, and I've heard some people say, oh, what's the Storm going to do with their combos? Can you carry Harry Grant and Nico Hines both on the bench, both being non-forwards? To me, it's not even a question. You absolutely can. And the big reason is because when you bring Harry Grant on, Brandon Smith is instantly converted to a middle forward. So it's kind of like you still do have that utility of 3 additional forwards to cover any losses as well as your rotation. And then Hines provides cover for anywhere in the back line, including the halves, as well as just being a weapon in his own right for deployment as Bellamy sees fit. Manly has no injury concerns. They come in very strong. Aloiai is back in the team. Sully is a notable reserve that could slot in, but this squad's going so well, I don't necessarily see who Sully even replaces. The way I look at it is what we know for sure is Manly's in really good form, and it's on the back of Turbo terrorising every opponent. And it's like whether it's Turbo himself with ball in hand, or it's just the threat of Turbo that it causes teams to load up and puts all eyes on him and then opens up the game. And whether it be on a short side with DCE and Olakau'atu or on the other side, the left with the 4 and Schuster combo, there's more places Manly can hurt you than purely just putting them down to a one-man team. But obviously it all comes off the threat of Turbo. The question is, how strong do you think the Storm's form is right now? Because if we'd had this conversation 6 weeks ago, people thought the Storm was unbeatable. And at that point in time, they won 13 of 14 games, 13 plus. And the only game they didn't win 13 plus was a game against the Titans during Origin with no rep players. So more recently, the Storm, I guess, has come back down to earth. And obviously they had that Eels game where they were second best, and there's been other games where at least for a half they haven't been able to seize control the way we were used to. So I think it's important for people to understand it's a 25 round season. Nobody can keep max intensity all year, and there's a reason why no team in history has ever won 20 straight games. It's just impossible. So I think that dip is pretty understandable by the Storm, and I think that they will be back to their best in this one now that everything's on the line with all these key players back. They've gained that freshen up. I think that it's clearly that they're going to have the full attention, or Manly's going to have the Storm's full attention, and they've got their eyes set on back-to-back competitions. And it's also important that you get this round 1 victory and you get that bye, because it's a war of attrition, and getting that 14-day prep to the prelim is just vital. So I think it's an all-in performance by the Storm. And yes, you look at these sides, and when you think of the Storm and Manly at their best, you're thinking of the fullbacks, Pappy and Turbo. You're thinking of the halves, what they can do. Even the wingers on these sides have been having field days throughout the season. But what maybe is less heralded are the forward packs of these teams. Whenever the Storm dominates a game, it starts with the forward pack. And I know Manly has a really quality pack that can match the Storm, but I still give the edge to Melbourne in that department, which I think then to some degree limits how destructive Turbo can be, because I feel like he's especially hunting for a quick play of the ball and momentum that then he can be most damaging, and that's less likely to happen when you're up against this international class Storm forward pack. And so I'm not ruling out Manly completely of an upset. I know that they've got the ability because they've got a pack that is not going to get bullied, but I still think Melbourne, the key edge, as I talk about, dummy half, experience. I think potentially the best two hookers in the game both play for the Storm, and it could just be that pivotal moment that separates these sides. And then if the Storm have their nose in front, it only takes kind of one big play in the second half to potentially cover the line for the full game as well. That's why I lean Storm for the full game. And on that Munster news as well, honestly, I think Nicho Hynes has been so good this year that even if Munster is out and Hynes plays 6, it doesn't change my opinion. I think the line could drop up to a point, but I would still be pretty happy with the Storm best bet in the first half, -3.5. Next up, we have the Roosters playing the Titans at Country Bank Stadium in Townsville. So the Titans will still have to travel for this one, as they should. They would be the designated road team, and the Titans are catching anywhere from +11.5 to +12.5 in this one. My lean is to the Roosters. The Roosters welcome back some really key forwards in Warrior-Hargreaves and Radley back from suspension. In terms of their lineup, Sam Walker remains on the bench. Now, honestly, I can't tell you the reasoning behind this. I think there's a few possibilities. In my opinion, Walker's the best option for them at 7. That creates the greatest threat for the Roosters. But, is he still carrying this shoulder complaint that has plagued him a little bit this year? Is he going to play 7, but Robbo's kind of playing mind games with the Titans and not letting them know for sure? Or does Robbo genuinely prefer the option of Lamb at halfback, a little bit more experience, slightly better defensively? So either any of those scenarios could be true. Either way, I'm sure that Robinson pulls the right rein when it comes to picking the best side he can. For the Titans, Proctor returns. He's had some shoulder injuries, but he'll be back for the Gold Coast. And this is a team that got handed a lifeline. You think like their finest hopes were on life support. They needed the Roosters to win. They got that. They needed the Storm to win. They got that. And then quite frankly, they got a favour from the Warriors, which was the Warriors turning in their worst performance of the year to make sure the Titans would win that game by more than 11 points. They've also named Peachy remaining at 6. Peachy's that guy, I think often he tries to do too much, some good and some bad. Brimson is not going to be involved in this match. He had that broken jaw a few weeks ago. I think they've said that if the Titans were to win here, he would be a chance to return next week. But in any regard, Campbell's been absolutely electric, and he's been a real shining light for the Titans, and that's exciting for their future. I'm not definitely, as I kind of reference how bad New Zealand was, I'm not going to overreact and give too much credit to the Titans for winning 44-0 on the final day of the season to get in because of how bad their opponent was. And what I will say, though, is that I do think the Roosters need to be wary of the fact that the Titans are going to be a dangerous team because they have absolutely nothing to lose when you consider how low their chances were of playing finals footy and getting that kind of second chance at life. But I still think there's a big advantage here to the Roosters, and that's the timing of this game. With the Roosters playing Thursday in round 25, while the Titans played Sunday, that's a pretty big difference. Not only does that mean the Roosters come into this game fresher, and then you're adding those couple of key forwards that didn't play last week, but also that longer preparation time you're giving to a really smart coach and to a really smart team. My mind does shoot back, as it does for all of these finals matchups, to the last time we saw these teams play. And that was a crazy game where the Titans were down 26 points, came back, hit the front, would have been the equal greatest comeback ever, but then they gave up a late try and then lost on a Walker field goal of all things. Yeah, one of the craziest games. But I still think the Roosters are clearly the better team in this one. Maybe not a wide margin when you consider all the guys that are out, but when I look at they do have the stronger roster. They do have like the more gun players in key positions, the better coach, that class, better execution. I just look across the park and I fail to see where the Titans would have a clear advantage and how the Titans could win this game. So I know that when the Titans do win, it's off the back of their forward pack steamrolling. I think if you look at the stats of the Titans' 10 wins in 2021, when they win by an average of over 20 points a game. But I just don't see this Roosters side getting steamrolled. I mentioned Radley's back in the middle, Victor the Inflictor, but Crichton came back last week. I really rate Tupanua, and then in the middle as well, Warrior-Hargreaves and TKO in there. I don't see the Titans gaining any ascendancy. I know if you like the Titans and that line, this is the biggest line of the weekend, and you're thinking that's pretty good for a finals game, and for Feeder, can come in and change the game. But I don't know if he's that guy that changes the game when his team's on the back foot. I think we kind of saw in Origin that Like Fafita, my analogy is kind of like a bowling ball. If you're going downhill, he's absolutely unstoppable. But if you're in an uphill battle, he's a lot less frightening. So I'm not afraid of Fafita. I would lean to the Roosters for sure. I don't think we have best bet value in the line there because it is quite steep. But spoiler, I'll use this game in part of the mixed matchup. Let's move to the second of the doubleheader at Townsville. Panthers play the Rabbitohs. And I'll say straight away my lean is to Penrith. And the first thing that comes to mind is it's actually a real shame from a neutral perspective that there's no Latrell Mitchell involved in this game, just because it could have been such a blockbuster. So we'll talk about the Bunnies first, even though they're the designated away team, just because I think that's the most interesting side to talk about. You've got 9 key players back because they rested everyone they could last week. That's definitely a positive. Interesting lineup quirk or situation for the Bunnies is who's going to play fullback. So they've named Taff, the young gun. He had a mixed night against the Dragons. He has some raps on him as being a talented player, but still very, very green player. You look at Souths, let's not forget last year Latrell was also out with the hamstring, and they dropped 60 on the Roosters in the final regular season game. They dropped 40 plus on the Knights in week 1 of the finals, 38 on the Eels. And cast your mind back to the prelim. Last year, it was these two teams, Panthers, Rabbitohs, no Latrell in that one. And there was a Reynolds 40-20 very late in the game. If it was an inch or two further or closer to the 20, the Rabbitohs really could have knocked out Penrith. So they did all that with Corey Allen filling in at fullback, and he's nowhere near the ability of Latrell. But it was a testament to what a well-oiled machine Souths are, to Bennett's style of attack, and to their other key skill position guys like Damien Cook at hooker, and particularly the halves, Cody Walker. So the case for Taff at fullback is that he can slot in and do what Corey Allen did last year. However, Souths didn't have Benji Marshall last year, so I do wonder, maybe you got to utilise him. The old boy showed he's still got a bit to offer this year when he has come in and deputised in the halves. So could you slot Benji Marshall to 5'8" and then play Cody Walker back at back at fullback? And I wonder if a factor that weighs into that decision is Cleary's kicking game, possibly the most frightening kicking game in the competition. Is Taff composed enough to deal with Cleary's, reign of terror and these bombs that are going to come all night? Or is Walker, a specialist enough? Does he practice enough under the high ball every week to play that position? And then you wonder if neither of them are the best option, whether Alex Johnston gets moved to fullback. Now you have a guy who's safer, more experienced, still has the speed, but then you sacrifice his incredible finishing on the edge. So since Souths are a double-digit underdog, I think whichever option they pick should be the one they think raises their ceiling and puts more points in them. So I think they just have to roll the dice and say, look, we are worried about all these bombs that are going to come down, but if our fullback spills 2 or 3 bombs, well, Penrith's going to be so hard to beat anyway. We just have to hope that we have a good night and, limit our errors, and we need to pick a side that's got the most points in it if we're a chance of an upset anyway. And with all that being said, as interesting as that's all going to be, and I think that is really interesting for anyone looking to back Souths this week, but that's not going to be me, because I think Penrith are just going to come into this game red hot. They just look to be ascending at the perfect time. Look, Tyrone May is out, but To'o came back last week. He was early returner from ankle surgery, had 300 meters and a hat-trick. They've had their bumps in the road this season. They've lost a little bit of form. They've lost some key players. But when you really look back, the fact that Cleary, Luai, Yo, To'o, Fisher-Harris have all had time out, if anything, freshens them up for the finals and gave other players opportunities to develop and step up when there weren't the other big guns to lean on. So I think it has Penrith in really good stead coming into the finals. The question I would ask to everyone is, do you actually think the Storm are the rightful favourites to win the comp right now? I think every bookie still has the Storm slightly shorter price than Penrith. And I don't know if that's even correct anymore. As good as the Storm are, and as much as that I've got a best bet on them, and I do think they beat Manly, I look at Penrith, we were really high on them last year. We rated Penrith going into the finals last year. And the biggest question you had on Penrith last year was they're lacking that big game experience. Well, now all these guys have, been through a finals campaign. The majority of the key players all played Origin as well. You're essentially adding Matty Burton to this team, and even Tavita Pangai Jr. as well. There's no way I'm backing against Penrith right now. Let's talk about the last time these sides met, Penrith and Souths, because it wasn't that long ago. And I have no regrets about backing Souths back when I did about 5 weeks ago. I think there were a lot of circumstances and conditions in that game that made Souths the right side to play that week. Although Penrith won the game by 13, it was a lot closer than the final score. But I don't want people to think that because Penrith beat Souths and kind of proved my best bets wrong a few weeks ago, that I'm jumping ship or I've given up on Souths. I just think like those factors I'm talking about, like To'o wasn't playing. Fisher Harris wasn't there. Souths were absolutely flying at the time. Penrith hadn't got back to full speed defensively or offensively. They were not in their red-hot form that they've since kind of evolved into in the last few weeks. And of course, Latrell Mitchell was playing and at the time was one of the form players of the comp. And it was a game with questionable motivation where you also lean more to the underdog. So you rule out all of those factors. They're not the case now. Even at the steep line, I would play Penrith. I wish I could have got them under that 10, but now we're above 10 everywhere. In fact, I've even seen one bookie, I think Ladbrokes and Neds have gone to a flat 12 for this game. It's getting a bit steep for me, and again, it's good for our Quinella bet needing Penrith. I do expect they'll win. It's a shame for a neutral because this could have been a scintillating matchup if we would have got South at their absolute best. But now I just really struggle to see how the Bunnies will get close. The only thing I will say on a positive note from neutrals is I think Souths are smart enough to know that they are a big underdog, and they have to kind of have that risk it to get the biscuit mentality. I'd love to see Souths come in, maybe try a trick shot, offloads, expansive play, and if you're a neutral, you're hoping a bit of that comes off, and it could make for an exciting game. But when you have to kind of chase the game and you have to play extra risky, it can also backfire, especially with Penrith swarming defense. So that's why I definitely strongly lean to Penrith, although I haven't found a best bet play. And finally, the Eels play the Knights, and the Knights are catching +7.5. I think. And +8 is also available. My best bet is either team 1 to 12, so neither team can win this game 13+. It's available $1.83 Sportsbet or $1.82 on a number of bookies. So Parramatta rested virtually everybody last week, so the fact they got shellacked by Penrith, doesn't faze me too much. And everyone's back this week, including Campbell Gillard, who had been injured previously. He's going to have to pass a fitness test with his groin. Madison was suspended. Now he's available and only in the reserves. Seems curious to me, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's picked in there on game day as well. The Knights shocked many of us, including myself, when they named a lot of their key players in a virtually a meaningless game against Brisbane. In the end, Frizzell dropped out, Ponga and Pearce came off at halftime, and then Brayley, Barnett, the Saifidi brothers, they all got a rest last week. I still wonder what the point of playing those guys even for a half was. Like, if the point was to build momentum or carry strong form into the finals, they failed because they got rolled in that first half when the key players were there. Clemmer copped a rib injury as well. So, again, it was a curious decision by O'Brien last week, but the fact is that they didn't spend a lot of petrol and a few key players did at least get a rest. So, what I will say is I'm not going to write the Knights off. People are talking like their form's not great coming to the finals. I know they've had some close wins and then lost last week. But last week, when you consider nothing was at stake and a lot of guys were out, I write that one off. And I still think Newcastle are deserving to be in the finals. I'll give the edge in this matchup to the Eels because they got the full rest and rested everybody while the Knights just rested some players. As I said at the top, if Parramatta is going to recapture the form they had 2 weeks ago where they beat the Storm, then our best bet's in trouble. They're going to be too good for the Knights. But this line being the shortest of the 4 lines this weekend, I agree with. I really do think Parramatta, I'm not as confident in them as I am about Melbourne winning and the Roosters winning and the Panthers winning. I really do think an upset is very possible in this one. If I have to play it, I'm taking the points. I was very close to playing +8 on the Knights as a best bet, but then I just decided the either team 1 to 12 was the even stronger option. I do have one concern. So, when I lay it all out there, and that would just be, do the Knights have a few busted players here? So Brayley, he got a rest last week, which is positive, but he's had to rest a couple of times. Mentioned Clemmer with the ribs. Daniel Saifidi has to still pass a fitness test with his knee, as does Suasu Su with the hammy. I think this team can sustain losing 1 or 2 forwards, especially if it's before kickoff and they can cover it. What the worst case scenario would be the Knights carrying a few busted guys into this game and then they can't go or they can't be effective in the match. And then Parramatta's forwards could swarm them and could get on top and could roll them. But that's the biggest risk I see associated with the Knights. But look, I still think there's other areas of the field where they win the matchup. Ponga against Gutho. May the best Mitch win the halfback battle. I really think this one could even be decided by a 1-pointer. So is it Moses? Is it Pearce that comes up with the match-winning play? Not sure. Looking forward to watching it, but I'm happy to take either team 1 to 12. So we don't have to sweat if it does come down to the final second. But We could also be sweating the mixed matchup because I'm also going to include this game, this Knights-Eels game, in that one. And I'll shoot back to what I said about the Roosters, where I do think they're going to be too strong for the Titans, and I do think the Titans could be playing carefree rather than desperate because they've got nothing to lose. I think the Roosters should score plenty of points for us. So I've got the Roosters to outscore the Eels at $2.15, paying max stake $200 available on TopSport. And for the reasons that I like the Roosters, although I couldn't quite get there with line value, I think there's still plenty of points in them, especially with Victor coming back in to help the playmakers and the ball players and just adds another dimension to their attack. And then I've just made the case for why I think the Knights can absolutely hang with the Eels, and I don't expect Newcastle to roll over. And I've always thought, if anything, Newcastle's struggles are finding points in recent weeks rather than leaking too many. So I like the matchup there. I think the market, in fact, has the Roosters slightly favoured over the Eels to score more points. We roll the dice with losing on a tie. Remember how we lost 3 in the first 6 weeks on ties in the mixed matchup? And I know people are really filthy about that, but we get that extra value because we take that risk on. And I think it's been worth taking that risk on because how many more wins have we had since round 6 and we haven't had a single tie? And that's giving us, 15, 20 cents extra value every single week. So that's my mixed matchup for the finals. I can't even guarantee I'll have a mixed matchup for you next week. From next week on, we're down to 2 games a week. It may not be possible with the way the totals line up and with finding an edge. And these are not easy to create, as much as the results would say differently. It's not easy, so I'm not going to cheat you guys and just try and come up with something that I can't really get fully behind. So if something jumps out at me, there's a mixed matchup next week. If not, this is the last one of the season. So jump on if you agree. Let me know what you think. Let's jump into some of these celebrity picks. And first of all, Matty O'Keefe, the Undertaker. Let's see what he's got.
Hey guys, Matt O'Keefe with a couple of bets for NRL finals. In the Manly versus Storm game, the bet I feel best about is Manly to score between 11 and 20 points. That's $2.36 with TopSport with the top-up button there. Storm conceded over 20 points only once this season. Of all teams, that was against Parramatta a couple of weeks ago. The question kind of is, do Manly score over 11? Well, at $2.36, I say yes they do, with Tommy Turbo there especially, and how dynamic they can be. In terms of the game itself, I think don't be fooled by Storm's recent efforts. They're going to be the very best version of the Storm. They'll be out with a point to prove. And the word is, they're not playing that well, but look out for them. In the next game I'm going to go, that's going to be the full-time teams to score 20 points market on TopSport. Panthers and Souths game, I'm going to go Panthers, yes, only team to score 20. In games with Nathan Cleary playing, they've conceded 20 points 0 times, and they've scored 20 in all bar one of them, and that was against the Storm in round 2. So we've just got a huge sample size there of they score 20 plus and don't ever concede it. Good luck with the bets.
Thank you, Matty. And I think it's worth noting as well, he's a staunch Manly fan. So the fact that even Matty doesn't necessarily think Manly's going to beat the Storm and doesn't see Manly scoring too many points. I agree with that one. I really struggle to see Manly getting over 20 points, even with the form of Turbo notwithstanding. And then agree with Matty also on his Panthers pick. I think Penrith should definitely be too strong. Next up, we've got pod debut, Mateos the Podonis. You've seen Mateos sharing tips in the Tripod app and in the group all season long. Has a phenomenal record in his own right this season as well, above 60% too. And this is the kind of stuff that's, as I know as well as anybody, is so hard to do. So great respect for what Mateos has achieved this year. And he's got he's got a best bet. Let's have a listen to it.
Good evening, Pod family. An absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks, Jacob, for having me on. It's been 26 weeks in the making. You guys have seen me posting in the group each week and value plays and best bets. And if you've been following me, you've had a winning season. And hopefully you've enjoyed my thoughts and insights. And if you're happy to hear my voice more, rather than just read what I can write, then more than happy for you to like and comment and see if I can be part of the final series with Jacob and the rest of the NRL campaign. It's going to be a cracker. And what better place to start than standing in front of Penrith's home ground, Bluebet Stadium, the team that I'll bet on to win the premiership. Hopefully they can pull a big weekend out and have a week off and get ready for the finals, but can't wait. There's one game that I like the most this week, and that's Parramatta against Newcastle. I think both teams had underwhelming performances last week. Can't take much away from it. They'll clearly look into finals, resting a bunch of key players. I think looking across the lineups, Parramatta have a slight edge in the halves, and the reserve bench, but I think Knights match up quite well in the forward pack. The Saifiti boys are back. Clement will get needled up. He will be right to go. And I think Ponga has a slight edge over Gutherson. And the outside backs with Best, I think that is slightly tips to the Knights' favour. So I had this game closer to 4.5. The Lions currently sitting at 8, 7.5 in some places. I think this will be the lowest scoring game of the round. I think this will be the tightest game with two sides essentially coming off a bye with so many players rested. They'll be fit. They'll be defensively minded across the park. And Parramatta's new hooker as well with Ray Stone. It might take a while for that combination to gel. And I think if this game goes deep and Parramatta are in a contest heading into the final half an hour, 20 minutes, I think this last 5 or 6 weeks will catch up with them and they might crack and feel the pressure. I don't think the win against Melbourne can erase 2 months of poor form, and I think everyone's happy to dismiss the Knights, and Knights are a laughing stock around many circles, but the Knights are a chance in this game off the stick, and I'm happy to take them on the spread. I think the first half will be tight, as I said, so the 2 bets in this game is first half under 22.5. That's on Ladbrokes and Neds, and Newcastle at +1.5. Try a handicap on Bet365. I can talk for hours, but I'm going to wrap it up there in case I get fined for not wearing a mask in public. But I'll still post my weekly article tomorrow if I find any other best bets, if anything jumps out at me. But for now, Newcastle Knights, my best bet. Enjoy, boys. Good luck.
And you would nearly have thought that I would have listened to Mateos's recap or his handicap before I did mine. A lot of similar points. Mateos is taking the Knights +1.5 tries, which is also kind of similar value to probably +8.5, which you can also get if you like the Knights. +8.5, $1.84 on Unibet, or +8, $2 Ladbrokes and Neds, and Mateos taking the +1.5 tries there. Expecting a tight game. I still, of all the ways to jump at this game, I like that either team 1 to 12, but strong agreement with me and the pod honest. And lastly, we've got Nicole from Sport Tech Daily, and these will be some try scorer tips, I'm sure. Let's have a listen.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole from Sport Tech Daily. Obviously, we try to find you value NRL try scorer players that are priced better than all the other bookies and priced better than our own predictive model. So the ones that we love for this week, Tom Trbojevic, $2.20, anytime try scorer at the TAB. So he has scored in 13 of the 15 games that he's played in this year in the NRL. One of the 2 games that he hasn't scored were up against the Storm, and even in that game, he had 4 line break assists. So obviously he's on fire. Brian To'o's the other one, $1.77 at Bet365. Now he's priced $1.65 or less on all the other sites, and our model actually has him priced at $1.47. So obviously the Rabbitohs are going to reshuffle a little bit. If you think the Panthers are going to be on a bit of a hot streak, he's a great value play. And the big odds value play of the week is first try scorer Ruben Garrick into Brighton To'o. So they're individually 15 and 950 on Bet365. Much better than our model, much better than every other site. And that multi is paying $142.50 compared to less than $100 on every other site. So good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Nicole, and appreciate all of Nicole's contributions this season too. He has actually found for us a number of long shot first try scorer or first second half try scorers, and one of his strategies is finding players that are often play in the middle when they get moved to an edge, and they still get priced as a middle, but he's found some really long shot value plays for the boys there. He's gone a little bit more riding the hot hand this week. Look, I can't really endorse the turbo pick because I'm kind of on the Storm this week, but I think if anyone can stop Turbo, it is Melbourne this week, but still, if you like Manly, that's probably not a bad price to get Turbo to get a try. You're obviously riding the hot hand with Garrick, and definitely with To'o, the form that he showed last week as well. And I definitely don't disagree with the Penrith play or any of their players scoring a try, especially so potent on that left edge. And they're bringing scrum players back too, which brings To'o into the game even more, as he got a double off scrums alone last week. So good luck to our celebs. Thank you. Appreciate those guys. Appreciate everybody who contributes to the pod and to the group each week with their tips and their write-ups as well. Good luck with anything you're backing this weekend. Enjoy the finals footy. Let me know what you thought of my tips or anything I've said tonight or anything you disagree with or your own tips. Appreciate any feedback. Good luck, gamble responsibly, and Lego.